grass is a more friendly grass. This colour is really magic. This Ikea was taking a picture of the white one. The white one is purified senses. The flowers are so big.
Yes, very big.
But this is really beautiful. I wish you can get it close up. This is extremely rare. Although what is rare is gradually becoming common. The shading is so beautiful. And the size, I've never seen something so large as this.
This picture.
The one in the botanical garden it looks like a cloudy sky, little patches. The veins are very prominent in the center. Sheer poetry. Really beautiful. This is the gratitude actually. It's so beautiful. I think they bloom at night, late at night. And usually they are faded by middle of the morning, or maybe gratitude, that's the real thing we need, isn't it? For all we get. Really lovely. This is a grass, an elephant grass, but actually I thought it was the help.
Yeah.
It's not got the same fragrance. Lemon, you know, lemon grass. Mother calls it help.
Yes, but it's not the same.
But this is like the. Have you ever grown maize? Corn. The corn is like this, and when you just touch these when they're ripe, the pollen falls like clouds. It's so beautiful. They're very pretty. But I think whenever you go in the world, whenever you find this kind of structure, you know the grass that children suck? Yes, here we are. Wherever you go in the world, you can safely take the soft portion of this.
Where is it?
Because once I remember I went with some little children in America, in a city, and we went by the side of a park, by the side of the road there was some grass growing. So I pulled it out, and they said, but no, it must be poison. I said, no, but it is protected, inside it is quite pure. I don't know if their mothers were very happy, but they were very happy. There we are, we have a pocket. When evolution takes place, it doesn't take place only in one place.
Yes.
It takes place in several areas of the same.
Yes.
There were some in some South Pacific islands.
Yes.
Some monkeys discovered that if you what did they discover exactly? I'm not very sure.
Potato.
Pardon?
Washing potato.
Washing potato. There was nothing to do with coconut or shells, no? The actual part of the story is that they learned a new technique of opening some fruit or some shell creature.
Yes.
And when they discovered that, monkeys on another island have absolutely no contact. They found out at the same time.
Yeah.
And they began doing this. So I'm saying this in the botanical garden, this plant is growing wild. And here, which is probably no connection with botanical garden, Pondicherry, they're also growing wild. So when evolution takes place, it must take place in several areas at the same time. But it's truly beautiful. They're different from the ones there, and yet they've got that same. See, it's something like this. But here they're much bigger. I suppose it's Oroville, that's why. Got them all over, in fact. These flowers open in the morning, a little like Shobinder's compassion.
Oh, see.
In fact, the fruit is like this. The fruit has got small, and the leaves are also eaten. The leaves. They're a bit slimy. Mother's name is Material Power to Heal. On the way here we saw Spiritual Power of Healing on one of those communities just as we turned off the main road. It was a whole, like not a building, but it must have been a parking covered with this Spiritual Power of Healing. So for healing we have two flowers. One is this, and the other is that is a material. This was given much later. The other one is an early flower. Spiritual Power of Healing. There's material power to heal, more direct. Sorry. The flower is a vehicle for carrying a force. So if a force is added to that, it becomes naturally much more powerful. So that depends on the person who is using the flower. So that's why when you talk of pardon?
The flower.
Giving. Because when you give the flower, you give it with a vibration. So if your vibration is the same as the flower, you give it with an intention. I mean, not only intention, but love and a specific will. Then naturally it carries a force. It's just like the flowers you keep for worship. I mean, you take flowers in the garden and they fade, but you take flower and keep it for offering, and it goes on lasting for a very long time. Either it is happy or you have added something to it which has made it last longer.
The remedies now, I know you spoke
Yes.
time about it because
It's a very touchy matter.
yeah, but then
But all is a matter of faith, evidently. That is for sure. And they must have a power for those who believe in them. That's absolutely sure. But personally, I still feel there's a difference between the purely psychological aspect with the flower as a vehicle and the use of the flower for whatever it may be. Evidently it's easier to use something prepared than to use a vibration which you cannot touch, you cannot feel, you can only absorb it inwardly. But then I think it depends on the person who gives, and it depends on the person receiving their faith and their openness also. I mean, Mother has given us flowers when we were young, so many kinds of flowers. But it doesn't mean that, it is working inside, but it may not have a direct or immediate visible effect, or visible change. That, of course, is because the outward change will come last. The other changes will come, are developing. Another good reason why children should be in contact with flowers in nature. It could be a form of emotional protection, because pink is just like a baby pink. It's a very soft pink. And discreet protection it's nearly a mauve. It's a color that is, in roses, humility and the love for the divine is a mauve rose. And discreet protection is a mauve-colored bougainvillea. But before we finish, we must do something on fragrances, because Mother says very clearly that she finds the significance more easily by the fragrance. Although we make kind of a formula that orange is the supramental, yellow is the mind, integral is white, but in her dealing with flowers, she feels that the fragrance, being so subtle, is the element by which she can contact the flower more easily. And when we asked her also about fragrances, she said that fragrant flowers give themselves more completely. There's that element of fragrance.
This one?
This is joy of integral faithfulness. But why it wasn't coming off so fast is because in the old book we have two names. One is joy of integral faithfulness, the other is peace of integral faithfulness. So I was asked yesterday, what is the difference between the two? And in the book we have tried to explain that peace of integral faithfulness is pure white, and joy of integral faithfulness is white with the border is pink. But actually, in all the flowers, the border is pink in the beginning. And when the flower is ready to fade, it is nearly white. The fragrance is very, very beautiful. In fact, they're very sensitive, these flowers, and they like water. If you just pluck it and keep it in water, with a little water inside, it becomes so fresh. And in fact, they stay a little longer than on the plant. They sort of are happy that you want to keep them. I would take a flower like this and make it fresh for 2 days. This one can be made fresh, but it will take a little time. But the leaves are so beautiful here. You don't have any pollution. That's the difference. Even in the ashram, they don't have this shine. So perhaps we may say that joy is when you want to feel joy, and peace is when you want to feel peace. Because the two are really undistinguishable.
In the morning, it's a little bit more towards joy.
And evening, yes, as the sun goes down and peace comes back, then they are.
It looks a bit like crystal.
Like
a crystal.
Yes, exactly. But here they're really in their element. And we don't have this. Of course, this is in the ground. Even in the ground in the ashram, it's not so many buds as here. It's a tidy shape, isn't it? It always has a nice rounded shape.
Mm.
We have plenty. It's always been in the ashram. Behind, we have a row of them. In front, we have a big one. I think this is the divine grace. And Mother says something like, We kneel before you in your grace is so infinite. We kneel before you in gratitude. So I was tempted to kneel, but it has a very interesting fragrance smell. I don't call it fragrance, but the leaves and the flower has a particular fragrance, which is very characteristic. And there is one form which opens pink. From the this one is white, by the way, in the beginning. You see these buds here? It will open pure white tomorrow morning, early in the morning, something like 4 o'clock or so. And during the day it turns from light pink to dark pink. But there's one variety which opens pink in the very beginning, in the morning itself. And that mother calls Love the Victor. And that is there in the very first list of flowers. But when she revised it, she has changed the name to Victorious Love. There was another hibiscus called Victorious Beauty. So after that was named, this was changed to Victorious Love. But I still like the word Love the Victor. It sounds like a war cry.
Love the victory or victor?
Love the Victor.
Victor.
He is the victor. He is the one who is victorious.
Okay.
It's a personification of the flower as a victor. Victorious love is a description, and here he is personified. It's a very beautiful plant, but requires a lot of attention. It's a young one, so it's very happy. This was called the beauty of supramental love. And when Orville was being made ready, then she would give this flower as the Orville flower. And you can take any bud in any hibiscus, and you can, you take a bud like this and pluck it. You keep it in water, and the next day it opens up.
Wow.
It's slightly smaller, but it's slightly smaller, but it is very intense in color. So all it requires is water now. Everything is there. Sometimes I do that when I've not got the time to come in the morning. I take a bud in the evening and then enjoy it the next day. They open up with tremendous force. Sometimes even without water they just open up. And in fact this flower, once it's opened, doesn't require water. It remains fresh for the rest of the day. Very unique flower. All hibiscus are unique, I think. The scent that reminds me of divine love. It's got that pink, very special shade. This is the beginning. Before we get there, we do aspiration in the physical for the divine love. And this is the one as children we would pluck the flower and suck. Oops. Same thing. To know whether it wants to come or not come. No. Try the other hand. This one. Yes. Very sweet. But it's interesting, this is not the sweetest nectar. There's another flower called Vital Impulsions. And that one has extremely sweet nectar.
Can you take it with a full bush, then I can go?
If you want the story. So this is the famous tree from the Middle East. Mother has a very interesting story connected with the divine love. She says that in ancient Chaldea, an avatar had descended upon earth to help mankind, but he wasn't understood by man. So they were torturing him, they had nearly killed him, so he was bleeding and he fled into the desert. And when he came to this little shrub which was in the desert, that was the only place he could hide. So he hid under this little bush, and those who were pursuing him, trying to kill him, they passed by without seeing him. And he lay there, mortally wounded. His blood was dripping into the soil, and he left his body in peace, just as he wanted to leave his body, without being more tortured. And this little bush grew and grew and grew until it started giving the flowers, where each, oh my, it was so beautiful, each of the petals is one drop of his blood. And the mother ends this little story by saying, and this is what we call the divine love. So we would like to call Mother down. She's always there, but still it's nice that we call her. And she helps us. And we bring back something of what she experienced in order to bring this new world upon earth. She was of course born with some special qualities. And I think the main special quality was the faculty to go within and to live within. In fact, I think that the inner has to be reflected in what we have outside us. And in one way the inner is the basis, and that is why in all our experiments, even with children, we try to have a moment of silence. We try to collect ourselves in order to sort of be in the right state. This was natural to the mother. From the age of 3 or 4, she would sit in her little chair all by herself and work through whatever happened, why it happened, what is this movement going on inside me. So I think that she was inwardly concentrated. The work that I feel where she is bringing something truly new for the earth is after her contact in Algeria, Tlemcen, with Max Théon and his wife. There she opened to the occult, which was the beginning of an experience that was to lead her into the mastery of the forces of the earth. In fact, it even went through into the significances. There was a hibiscus that was called Power Over the Things of the Earth. Mother changed that later, simply because in our modern world, where we think of power and advantage and profit, it doesn't really make any sense, because we turn the whole thing around and look at it not from a correct point of view. So she took out that significance later. But that is, the occult world is certainly the power over the things of the earth, because you're using forces which really are very effective in a very subtle but direct way. But it is when she went to Japan, the land of beauty, and also the land of Buddhism, because she was deeply in contact with the teachings of Buddha and has even recommended their practice in her Commentaires sur le Dhammapada. It is not a futile exercise to sit quietly and have a silent mind. It is through beauty, evidently, that everything expresses itself here upon earth. And naturally, in Japan, it was the ideal place for her to experience beauty, where even the common person, when they would go for a picnic, they would first choose the spot or the moment of the year when certain flowers were in, like the Japanese, the cherry tree. And they would just choose a spot that was beautiful so they could have a picnic there, just to look at that beauty in nature. In prayers and meditations, we have all this wonderful experiences of the Mother. This period between 1916 and 1920, when through her complete dedication to the Lord, love for Him entirely, she experienced what we may say, what we may call the soul of nature, Mother Nature. Mother Nature as a part of the Divine Mother. The other day we spoke about this experience with the cherry tree, and there, of course, the most intimate identification was she realized this identification with a cherry blossom on a tree laden with flowers, and through the blossom into the tree, into the branches, into the trunk, down to the roots, she gradually began to feel and experience a kind of current of blue force. Interesting that it's a blue color, isn't it? And this force was rising up, possibly the expression of the aspiration of the tree towards the divine, towards the light. And I think the most revealing sentence there was, she comments after this experience of identification, what difference is there between the consciousness of the tree and the consciousness of man? In truth, there is no difference. It is the same consciousness. So evidently she had that power to identify. And many of the prayers at that time speak of this glory of nature. She talks of little tiny roses that a Chinaman is selling by the side of the road, and the other aspect of love, but a love which gives itself for everything without even wanting anything at all in return. It was the beginning of the feeling of divine love, which of course is the expression of the mother, the divine love. So this is what she brought back with her from Japan when she came to join Sri Aurobindo again, because she had already been with him for about a year in 1914 when she came for good, leaving France for good rather, but she couldn't stay with Sri Aurobindo because of the war. Well, it's a much deeper story, because after 1926, Sri Aurobindo on 24th of November had the experience of the descent of the consciousness of Krishna, the overmind, which is of course, we may say, the level of the gods, the last stage of our mentality, our present mentality. And as soon as he had revealed this, he had told the sadhaks that this is the experience. They had a meditation. There was a very interesting detail which has always struck me as being very significant. It seems there was in the room where Mother and Sri Aurobindo were sitting, and the sadhaks were called inside. This was of course in the prosperity room, the reception area upstairs, where Sri Aurobindo was at that time. There was a hanging on the wall in black, I believe, with 3 dragons, each dragon holding the tail of the other one. So it made a kind of circle. And this was the occult, or the symbol that Mother had, evidently the Mother had put it up. Mother had this quite interesting connection with dragons, and this is rather an aside because in the darshan room where you go upstairs before, they used to have something like a curtain, but you know those kind of curtains with just, it's like a festoon, it borders the door without being really a curtain or a screen. And on these little side curtains, we had always this dragon. I don't know why they're taking it out. Probably people touch it, and in those days nobody would touch. Or, in fact, the darshan of Mother and Sri Aurobindo is so powerful that you had no time, or you could not focus on anything except on yourself and the darshan to be the Mother and Sri Aurobindo in the little room which was at the end of the room where we come out nowadays. This is just to tell you how powerful the atmosphere in the presence of Mother and Sri Aurobindo was. So after this very powerful meditation, where Sri Aurobindo said that he has received this over mental consciousness, and from then onwards he would retire to work on what he had to do, and the Mother would take charge of the ashram. Evidently up to that point, Mother was very much in the background, but it was a difficult period in the ashram because those who had come for Sri Aurobindo found it difficult to feel that they should now turn only to the Mother, because Sri Aurobindo had retired and there were just 3 days in the year when he would be seeing the sadhak. Of course he wrote letters and replied all through the night. But physical darshan was limited because of his inner work. But that was the point when, through different letters and through Sri Aurobindo's inspiration, he wrote Dhammapada. And of course, when asked if the mother was the mother whom they knew, he said, yes, she is the Divine Mother. So it made it very clear for most of the sadhaks, but some sadhaks could not understand, and a few left. Coming back to the flowers, in 1929, towards the end, we have a record of flowers that were painted in a group. It resulted from a kind of game that Mother would play with about a handful of sadhaks like Nolinida, Setna, Champaklal, Pavitra, I believe also. So she would give a group of 2 or 3 flowers and ask the sadhaks to make a sentence. In Champaklal Speaks, he gives most of these sentences that were worked on in those days. And if you count the flowers that are mentioned, it comes to over 150. So that means to say that already between 1926 and 1930 or 1929, Mother had already started giving names to flowers. We didn't have our own gardens. The gardeners would actually go out at night with a stick and a lantern and steal flowers from French people's gardens until once one of the gardeners who wasn't so nimble and fast got caught and it was reported to the mother. Of course she knew about it, but she didn't say anything until this happened, and so then she said, we must have our own gardens, we must have our own flowers. And in her typical way she started getting seeds from France and making everything grow. Ashram houses would have their little gardens. She particularly loved roses. So in fact, in the ashram there is a gate next to the main gate called the Rosary Gate. It's called the Rosary Gate because on the terrace there was no, when Navajat and now Vijay has their room, there was no room, but it was a terrace. And actually there was an access from, I believe there was an access. No, there wasn't an access. I don't know how they got up there. But anyway, oh yes, they must have got up there from behind the Samadhi. Anyway, Mother would grow roses on the terrace. So it is called the Rosary. En fait, en français, ça s'appelle la roseraie, which is a rose garden. So that became the Rosary. Nothing to do with the Rosary. So that was, Mother's enthusiasm, of course, was contagious. Everybody began looking at flowers, trying to grow flowers, offering flowers, and Mother would also give back flowers in return. Now, these were the, you may call the humble beginnings. And although there weren't many flowers, basically we had everything we need in that 150 because we had psychological perfection, which is, I mean, it is a world in itself. I constantly say that. And divine solicitude, which is like divine health, but much bigger. We had, of course, divine love, the pomegranate flower. Victory, of course, which is, of course, the victory over oneself. And inwardly it must have been a very intense period, because there was nothing but the yoga, the meditation, and the darshan of the mother, and of course the inner work, which brought up so many problems which we think nowadays why did they write those silly little things? But of course these things had to be brought out so that they could be seen and changed and offered for transformation. In fact, transformation was already the key word. We have it in so many of these little sentences. That was the goal, simply because the integral yoga doesn't reject anything, but it transforms everything. So now we continue in our little story. We come to the period just before the war, and when the war broke out. Sri Aurobindo was intimately in touch, because it was evidently a war with the forces of darkness and the asuric, the devilish forces that wanted to sort of destroy this civilization. So although he was for independence and wanted the English to be out of India, he supported England and the Allies in their fight against Hitler. At that particular point of time, 1942 perhaps, they began a very interesting practice, which it took us some time to understand. I mean, we who came afterwards, at that time it was just, mother wants this, that is what we'll do. Certain flowers were counted. Service, transformation, I'm sure about. Because I remember as a child, even myself, picking up the flowers, putting them in baskets. And then other people would count them and give the numbers of the flowers to the mother. How many services did we get today, she would ask, or how many transformation flowers? And these were noted down, and mother kept the record. She used to always, in everything that happened in the ashram, she always wanted to keep a record. And everybody was service time, everybody was sort of on hands and knees and collecting the flowers, mainly from the ashram, because that's where the service tree was. And then of course some braver people may have gone to the park, but I feel that most of the flowers came from whatever we had in our own gardens. It wasn't really a time when people went, as I did later on, exploring the countryside or exploring the public gardens, because things were very concentrated, extremely concentrated on the ashram, and of course children on the school. And the third place was the dispensary, which wasn't really a dispensary, but it was a place where you felt at home, when you weren't feeling good. The doctor was like your father. In fact, it's very funny, because when I was young, I used to run everywhere, and I would run to the ashram and find myself in the dispensary, and I would run to the dispensary and suddenly find I'm in the ashram. The doors were a little similar. So it was an intense period, but very joyful, because you met the mother nearly every 2 or 3 hours of the day. So everything was focused around her. So these flowers would be then, as mother describes in her Entretiens, in her questions and answers, in her classes, that she would make long lists. What she says there is extremely interesting. she says that she was making a pact with nature. Nature was telling her, this is what I have, take it. It's for you, it's for your work. And she would say, well, I only want these things for the Lord, for His work. And she makes one or two very interesting observations. She says that if you look at the seasons as they happen, you'll find that certain flowers are replaced by other flowers, but the quality or the significance or the meaning or the value is kept up still. I mein, if in a kind of little study that I made, beginning to make actually, if you take transformation, it's a tree that blooms in the cooler months. Now, of course, seasons have completely changed. That's another story. But because of the supramental force, everything is changing. But later on we have conversion. We have conversion of the physical mind, this little bulbous plant that comes up, and everywhere you have these flowers. So you have transformation decreasing, but you have conversion again growing up. Then in the middle of the summer you get alchemy. Just after the rain in June, July, all these bulbous plants, white flowers, come up in big bunches. It's alchemy, and it all means the same thing, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we don't want to stretch the point, but it's to show that everything is balanced out by nature. And she in fact remarks that sometimes nature would say, no, I'm not going to give you this now. Another time she would give so much that, you are overwhelmed by what she gives. Now I come to the interesting and rather amusing part of this little story. The gardener friend who was very close to me, I was close to him, he was the gardener. One of the gardeners. There was another gardener called Parichand, and this man's name was Jyotinda. He was also a poet, but a gardener. I could spend the whole days talking about him, but such a delightful person. I picked up all the names, most of the names from him and his own student, who became also the gardener, Jibon. Well, he told me that he could give flowers to Mother and ask the name at any time that he felt like going to her. And at one particular, I think it was I don't know what exactly, I don't remember even. Maybe it was I feel it was at a blessing, that means to say in the evening when everybody went to the Mother. Mother would sit in her chair like a queen in the meditation hall, and everybody would be dressed up in their best and go to her. That was more or less the great distraction that there was in the ashram in those days, to go to the Mother for blessings. It was a very happy time. I think it was probably shown to Mother. It is a flower which is growing in the Matrimony nursery, Matrimony area, and it is called by the Mother Realization of Supramental Wealth. But when it was first shown to the Mother, it didn't have a meaning, and when Mother saw it, she said simply, "Oh, this is the realization of supramental accounts. This is the realization of accounts. Now we don't have to count anymore, everything is accounted for." Because she was getting probably, I can't mention that word, it's impossible. She wasn't getting tired of it, but in her own words, she had done what she wanted to do, and it was over. at one time we thought that there was a connection between the war effort, as they said in those days, and this counting of flowers. But in truth there was absolutely, no connection as such. It was purely between nature, the mother, and the Lord. So later on, when we had chance to ask her questions, in fact with Tara, she would ask the questions to the mother when she would take 5 flowers every day for mother to revise, to give a commentary. We asked her if there was, we knew the connection, it was the offering. But we asked her, why did you stop then? Not in connection with the other story of the flower, evidently. So mother simply said in her typical way, I stopped when I'd finished. So this is to show you, I brought it up mainly to discuss and to talk about the collaboration of nature. And what we receive, fallen on the ground like these little oranges, is her gift to us. So that was during the wartime, and we only mention it simply because it's a point people remember in time. Evidently didn't have really much connection with the tremendous work of Sri Aurobindo, except that the Lord won the battle and the forces of darkness were put aside, and we could begin to build the world anew. But talking about wartime, it did a very great good to the ashram, because it brought the children. Before there were no children. The atmosphere was so intense, children were not allowed inside the ashram. Even the 1 or 2 children who were there had to have very special permission to enter. But during the war, families felt insecure because the Japanese also were advancing towards India. And so, as usual in India, you take protection at the feet of the gods. And here you have the living gods, so you ask the mother if you can come and stay in Pondicherry, South India, far away from all the scene of the battle. So that is how children, and mother, of course, being the mother, could not refuse. So families came, children came. A school started. But for mother, something very important happened. She could start speaking French. Bonjour was the word that all the sadhaks knew. Very few sadhaks made a great effort to learn French. But after the children came and everybody started, the French fever caught on. Even the older sadhaks went in class to learn to read prière et méditation. And make mother extremely happy by a short sentence in French. So talking about the flowers, all the significances were in English, but gradually, with the arrival of children, the beginning of the school in 43, end of 43, things began to turn in a new direction, and mother would use French. In fact, the first book brought out on flowers was in French. The first revision, the only revision of the flower book with the significances and the commentaries was done in French. So that is the great importance that mother paid to that language. Well, evidently, Mother said categorically that if I ever have something important to say, I will say it first in French. She would always try to speak in French with everyone. She also admitted that Shrivinda loved French. And he said that if there was any other language that he loved, it was French. He wrote in English, of course, because his whole education was, and of course if you read the future poetry you'll know why he used French, why his English was such a special. I think the answer is very simple since we're in Oroville, Mother has given 4 languages for Oroville. There's English, which is the international language, French is the cultural language, excuse me, Tamil is the language of the land, but Sanskrit is the language of India, of this huge civilization which is now bearing the whole world. It happened also in Japan, where she had her own kitchen garden, and she would go every morning to look at the garden and naturally to pluck something for the kitchen for whoever she was staying with. And she said sometimes she would want to pluck a vegetable, the vegetable would tell her, no, don't pluck me today, wait for a few days. Whereas others would call her, oh, come, please pluck me. I want to be plucked. So, evidently, it was those little voices that she could hear in the plants, because, of course, she had developed that sense, and she had that intimacy. In fact, the first thing I thought of when Mother was no more and the flower work had sort of stopped, what was the best way to know plants and flowers deeply? At that moment I thought the real way is to grow them, because then you know them and you are in connection with them, and you watch them as they sort of develop, as they blossom, as they give their fruits. Everything becomes very intimate and personal to you, because all of us know that if you grow flowers, they will give you special flowers on your birthday, or if you need to give somebody a flower particularly and you're desperately looking, you find suddenly your plant has brought the flower for you, even without you telling it, but it knew there was that connection between you and the plant, which is what we find in this story becomes living for everyone. So I'm sure that is the step, because now we're gradually coming to the question of all questions. Why did Mother give names to flowers? She gave names to flowers to make yoga easy. To make yoga easy. And to bring it into the material world. I'm always reminded in this respect. I was asked a question some years ago by a friend. When did Mother name supramental manifestation? So I said, well, it was named long ago, it was not a recent flower. So she asked, but the supramental manifestation was in 1956, when Mother knew that the door was open, the forces rushed down upon earth. So I said, yes, I hadn't thought about that, but that was, the name was there even before. So she said, before the supramental manifestation? And that means, evidently, that things are being prepared somewhere else, on another plane, in another level, but equally realizable, shall we say, or equally approachable, equally manifest through the flower. And perhaps it may be of interest here to remember what Mother said when she was asked, not why, but how does she give significance to a flower? And she said simply by going into contact with the flower and to what it represents. And she, in some of her talks, she says that this does not come at once. You have to sort of try to identify yourself with this vibration, and later on you can sort of put words to it. I mean, the idea has to become formulated in words, and you choose certain words, and then you find these words probably express what you have felt. But at the same time, she asks even herself the question that, does this vibration come from the inner being of the plant, or is it something which we have been used to by our own association with the plant? I mean, you can take anything you like. In India we can take Tulsi, devotion, which is of course what she's talking about when she's asking this question. Tulsi is used all over India as the most auspicious form of worship. In the West you have the divine Ananda, you have grapes, which from time immemorial is the ecstatic state of union. And the corresponding plant, the basilic, which according to me is the most revealing name, simply because the basilicum is the center, the sanctorium of churches. And you see the long association with man's own aspiration. So she doesn't really answer the question, but she leaves it as a kind of search. So we more or less have to each one discover one's own relation, one's own understanding with the flowers. When this work began, it was a pure offering. It was a psychological understanding that I'm going through a lot of trouble and I feel all this falsehood in me. So what do? Oh, there's a flower called surrender of falsehood. So let me surrender all my falsehoods to the Divine so that He may remove them forever. That was the initial movement of the work with flowers. And Mother may reply by giving divine presence, for instance. Well, she replied in so many ways, but I mentioned divine presence simply because in those days when Mother would offer flowers to everybody, then at a blessings, for instance, it would be the same flower usually. And there were more or less 3 flowers that I remember. One was the divine presence, the little tiny flower hidden in a cup. The divine solicitude, which of course is equal to divine help. And the third was victory. Oh, I'm sorry, the fourth was very important. Most often given, psychological perfection. We have a tree in the ashram, we have a tree in Nantai, which is both very old gardens, and those flowers in those days were, during the season, were enough for Mother to give to everybody. So that was the beginning of the work with flowers. It was a work on yourself and with the Mother as guide. So the work that we begin to work out in education is first of all through nature, because nature is the Mother. Universal terrestrial nature is a form of the Divine Mother. And through that we approach the flowers. And as we approach the flowers, then we start on a different level slightly our own identification with them through the 5 senses, and maybe through another 6 senses we were mentioning, a sense which the yogin, the artist and the poet use to identify themselves with this wonderful creation that is the flower. So we are beginning actually a new adventure, a new beginning, simply because we cannot run to the Mother and ask her, what's the name of this new flower I have? But we have already before us all the elements with which we can study ourselves and know more about all that Mother and Sri Aurobindo have written in their work, in their guidelines, in their inspiration, in their what we call their teaching. So that is where we are going now. She must understand that for such a long period of time I've been concentrating on names. Mother's name, botanical name, common name, Indian name. So, to tell you the truth, it's a great handicap. It's an extremely great handicap. It's just like the handicap that a teacher faces when you feel that what I know is knowledge. What you know is a way to go there, but it is not the goal. And that is why the deepest form of contact I find nowadays is simply through poetry. because it brings out a spirit which is so subtle and at the same time very, very intimate. Everybody can feel it by the sound, by the imagery, by the music. And it brings you into a state which is preparing you for that, what you call that revelation. Personally, flowers evidently attract me, and I'm really not curious to ask myself what could be the meaning. I got a nice knock on the head when I used to think that, oh, this is not so difficult, perhaps it's like this, perhaps it's like that, perhaps it's related to this flower, perhaps it's related to that flower. It happened like this. There was a flower which Mother had not named. All the gardeners were dying to know what Mother would give it, what Mother would give to this flower. She would just keep quiet. I knew this, and I also knew the flower. And I thought to myself, look here, this flower looks so much like service, only it's much smaller. But the fragrance is not like service, it's something different. Perhaps it's connected in some other subtle way. The leaves are beautiful. The leaves are like fairyland. They hang and they've got tiny little leaflets. But it's very artistic. Even when there are no flowers, it's a joy just to look at it. Whenever I would pass, I would say, oh, I wonder when Mother will give the name to this flower. This is how it happened. You will laugh. There was a gentleman living in Auroville. I think his name was Tatsat. And he had a friend, a young girl. She must have been about 15 or 20. I don't remember her name now. She was going to the Mother for her birthday. So she plucked a flower and took it to the Mother. It was this flower. She gave it to the Mother, and Mother said, oh, this is lightness. And of course when she came down, she said, Mother gave me a name to this flower. She called it lightness. And all the gardeners were like that. Why didn't Mother tell me that? But, and there, as they say in English, thereby hangs the tale. This young lady was practicing to become a ballet dancer. Her whole dream was to be a ballet dancer, to be so light, to be like a fairy on her toes. When I heard this, I knew that you cannot find the name. It has to be the moment. It has to be the need. It has to be the aspiration that calls it. Although nature has such a wide aspect, and it embraces our own nature, evidently. But for me it is the key. I mean, I can talk to you forever about nature. You feel uneasy, you feel not well, you go into nature, you come back fine. You may have lots of things troubling you, worrying you. You go into nature and you feel, oh, what's there to bother about? This is not such a big deal. It sort of melts away into nothingness, and you're left just with a happy state, a happy feeling. It is such a reward. Even the lizard agrees with me. In India they say if the lizard makes a sound, it means what you have said is correct. So for me it started maybe subconsciously. I would love to go into the forest as a child, even in England. I would love to go into a place where nobody was there, where it's difficult to penetrate. I would even love to make a hole in the ground and get inside and cover myself up. But later on, when I was busy doing all sorts of sports and exercise and things like that, I would come back tired and sweating and just sit at the base of a very huge tree in the garden where I was staying, very big and very old. I would just sit down, and after a few minutes I would get up and I'd feel so fresh. I'd feel as though I don't need a rest now, I'm quite ready. Only I need a bath, but otherwise I'm fresh. And I always think that putting the middle of your back against a big tree is very restful. Other friends of mine think you must embrace the tree and feel it close to you. Each person has their own way. I mean, in town you feel a little disturbed by the traffic, by the noise, by what's going on, and then as you come near a big tree, you suddenly feel, oh, how peaceful it is. I experienced that at night once. It was so beautiful. We were going by cycle in a shortcut to the lake, which means you had somewhere near Jipma there was an old road crossing, and we would come near these big trees. At night it's really powerful. You come near these big trees and suddenly you feel somebody is there, somebody is there. Of course, I've got a different contact. When going in the countryside, I would see a tree very far. I say, there, we must go there. There we must go. There we must go. Something is calling you. Huge banyan tree. From far you would feel it, as though it's calling you. Come, 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 come. I mean, you can't put it in words, but you can feel its presence from quite a distance. I mean, this is not in a forest. This is just when a big tree standing by itself. It's really, and when you go near, you see, yes, it's a very sacred tree. There's a little temple inside which the travelers go to, those wayside temples with just a stone or maybe somebody's left a flower, but there's nothing else there. But there is a presence. And I think it all grows as you. That's why I feel that children should be exposed to nature as soon as possible, because it really will live with them for the rest of their life. I ask children to suck flowers, so I always tell them, first you must ask. You just pull and ask, are you coming? Yes. Are you coming? No, you're not coming. Okay, then I leave you. Because others, what they do, they just go on Say, oh, there's a flower, you can nectar, quick, quick, quick. I think asking gives you a little stepping back. There's so much to learn in nature. When the service tree had grown quite big, and they thought that, well, we must remove some branches, so Mother was asked, and Mother said, no, you can't remove, because actually many spirits come for protection, and they've nowhere to live. We don't give them a room, so they stay in the tree, near to me. That's why it's quite important that these little spirits of souls that are still maybe not yet left the earth, or maybe spirits who are still attached to something which they cannot leave. I mean, there must be umpteen reasons. It must be a whole world in itself. I'd like to tell you it's an interesting story, but it gives an idea of this. The spirits. Mother had gone to the sugar mills. It was opened. She went when this first stone was laid, and she went when it was already working. So she was taken to see how everything works, and they took her to the point from where she could see the bullock carts come, and the sticks are taken off the bullock cart, and then they are just, the top is chopped off, and they are just sort of rubbed and put on a conveyor belt. It carries them, and the rest of the process is more or less automatic. Mother was standing there watching this canes going through the first crusher, and she said, millions of little spirits came rushing to me and said, what are they doing to us? Why are they doing this? Why are they crushing us like this? All of a sudden, what have we done? We have not done anything. Please save us. Please protect us. The little spirits were inside the sugar cane. And Mother said, don't worry, be calm. I'm there to protect you. And she said they were just hoarding round me. And he was so strong that when she went back to the ashram, they were following her. Said, save us, protect us. So she said, all right, I will put this little formation out. That little formation will take care of you, so don't worry. And she could go on with her work independently of these little beings. And then she adds, and this is what we call sugar? It is true, and Mother says categorically in all her talks on education, never ever discourage a child or say that what he has seen is true, and say, oh no, this doesn't happen in real life, this is only in fairy tales, you're only imagining. Never ever stop a child from believing in something. Whatever they believe in, you must always support. You must always let them believe. Because it is through belief that they are growing to something. I mean, whatever she has said, we are far, 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 far behind. I was reading only just yesterday where Mother is saying, a teacher is saying, but this child in my class, what can I do with him? He doesn't want to study. So Mother answered, but why do you want him to study? Perhaps he doesn't want to study. So that is all right. Let him have a choice. Let him choose. But why should you say, he must study? We are here to study. Let him find the joy of studying. I mean, I'm adding to this, but I mean, it's so simple. We have no right to say, you must study this. The child has to awaken to it. when I first came to the school, I joined the class and I had to learn French. I was not interested in French. I was playing on the back bench for the whole year. And the teacher was just like that, looking at me as though I didn't exist. And I didn't care. But the next year I thought to myself, this subject doesn't seem so difficult after all. And then I started learning French with such a vigor. Even now I'm crazy about French. Every Frenchman I would go behind him and said, "Vous parlez français?" So I would go to him, and whenever I caught hold of him, I would speak in French. Whenever I had written something, I would take it in French and show, is this correct? I became mad about French. Just because it was my decision to learn French. In fact, often teachers will say to mother, "But if he doesn't study, he'll be lazy." So mother said, "Then let him be lazy." But when he wakes up, he's going to work 100 times faster. I read a notice in the school where mother says that to make noise in class is an absolute stupidity. Because if you come to class for some reason, and that reason is not to make noise. A very strong mother can be very powerful.